There's an old saying that no one can hurt you like your own family. I never fully grasped the depth of that truth until my own daughter, Ava, decided to ban me from her wedding, a wedding I paid for. The pain of that betrayal runs deeper than words can describe, and in the aftermath, I took a drastic step. I cancelled the entire event. Ava is 27, my only daughter, and her wedding was set to take place yesterday. For years, I had dreamed of this day, not only because it marked a new chapter in her life but because it symbolized some kind of peace after the turbulent years of raising her. Ava was a challenging child, strong-willed, defiant, and often at odds with those around her. When she announced her engagement, I was relieved that she had found someone she loved and wanted to build a life with. Her fiancé seemed like a decent man, and the two of them had been struggling financially. So, as her father, I offered to pay for the wedding as a gift. It felt like the right thing to do. But that decision, born out of love, would come back to haunt me in ways I could never have imagined. A few days ago, I contacted the wedding planner to make a small addition to the guest list. My brother wanted to attend, and I thought it was a reasonable request. However, when I brought it up, the planner hesitated, telling me that the guest list was already full. He promised to check what could be done and asked if I wanted a copy of the guest list emailed to me for reference. Curious, I agreed. But what I discovered when that email arrived left me reeling. Neither my name nor my wife's appeared on the list. Not only were we not invited, but Ava had also explicitly instructed the wedding planner to ensure we were kept out of the venue. Disbelief coursed through me as I stared at the names. I immediately called the planner back, insisting there had to be a mistake. He was hesitant to explain further but eventually forwarded me an email thread where Ava made it clear we were to be excluded. She even instructed the venue staff to deny us entry if we tried to show up. The pain of that realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My own daughter, for whom I had sacrificed so much, didn't want me at her wedding. It felt like a slap in the face, a cruel reminder of all the years she had pushed me away, but I never imagined it would come to this. I tried to reach Ava that same day, but her phone went straight to voicemail. She was out celebrating her bachelorette party, completely unbothered by the pain she had caused me. I left her a message, pleading with her to call me back, but days went by without a response. Frustrated and heartbroken, I decided to confront her in person. When I arrived at the apartment she shared with her fiancé, she refused to see me, claiming she was too busy preparing for the wedding. By then, I had already informed her wedding planner that I knew about the guest list. It was clear she was avoiding me. Eventually, I managed to get her on the phone. The conversation that followed only deepened the wound. "I know what you did," I told her, my voice trembling with anger and sadness. Her response was ice cold, "Good for you. Now you don't have to waste time or effort coming to the venue. I'll send you some pictures if I feel like it." I was stunned. There was no apology, no explanation, just indifference. She brushed off my pain as though it meant nothing to her. Tears streamed down my face as I demanded an answer. "Why would you do this to me? After everything I've done for you, why would you treat me this way?" Her answer cut me to the core. She accused me of mistreating her throughout her life, citing instances where she felt I had taken the side of others over her. According to her, I had failed as a father by not blindly supporting her, even when she was in the wrong. She brought up old grievances, times when I had disciplined her, stood by her stepmother, or refused to condone her bad behavior. Ava had always resented me for not coddling her, but I had hoped that, as an adult, she would see that my actions came from a place of love. She didn't stop there. "You owe me this wedding," she said with venom in her voice. "It's the least you can do after all the negativity you've brought into my life." That was the breaking point. I told her I owed her nothing, not the wedding, not the sacrifices I had made, and certainly not my forgiveness for the way she had treated me. She dismissed me, saying she didn't have time for my emotional drama, and hung up the phone. When I returned home, I broke down in front of my wife, Mercy, who is Ava's stepmother. Mercy has always been a kind and forgiving person, but seeing me so devastated ignited a rare fury in her. She urged me to stand up to Ava and put an end to her entitlement. For years, Ava had taken advantage of my generosity. She lived off my financial support well into her 20s, and when she finally got a decent job, she had no savings because she spent recklessly. This wedding was yet another example of her expecting me to foot the bill without showing any gratitude or respect. Mercy's words resonated with me. "You've done enough for her," she said. "It's time to let her face the consequences of her actions." With a heavy heart, I made the decision to cancel the wedding. I knew it would hurt her, but after years of enduring her selfishness and cruelty, I felt it was the only way to make her understand that actions have consequences. I started by contacting the wedding planner and calling off all arrangements. I wasn't concerned about losing the deposits or non-refundable payments, I simply wanted to send a message. I knew Ava would find out eventually, but I wanted her to feel the full weight of her choices. On the day of the wedding, chaos unfolded. When the caterers, decorators, and other vendors arrived at the venue, they were turned away by security. Ava and her fiancé were caught off guard, and when they tried to enter the venue, they were stopped as well. The wedding planner called me in a panic, demanding an explanation. I calmly told them I was no longer responsible for the event and that Ava should handle the fallout. From what I heard, Ava got into a heated argument with the venue staff and nearly ended up in legal trouble for trespassing. I blocked her number after that. I didn't want to hear her excuses or endure her wrath. When she showed up at my house, I instructed the guards to deny her entry. For once, I prioritized my own peace over her demands. After the chaos of the cancelled wedding, I hoped that Ava might reflect on her actions and begin to understand the impact of her behavior. Instead, she doubled down on her anger, lashing out at everyone she deemed responsible for her humiliation. I had blocked her on all platforms, but I heard through family members that Ava was furious and spreading her version of events to anyone who would listen. My parents, who had always been supportive of her despite everything, were her next targets. When they tried to reason with her and offered to help her reschedule the wedding at their expense, she turned on them as well. "You're just as bad as him," she yelled, accusing them of taking my side. The confrontation ended with her kicking them out of her apartment and telling them never to contact her again. The situation was spiraling further out of control, and as much as I tried to distance myself, the guilt began to creep in. For all her faults, Ava was still my daughter, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed her somehow. But Mercy, my steadfast wife, reminded me that I wasn't responsible for Ava's choices. "You've done everything you could for her," she said. "She has to take accountability for her own life." Still, the guilt lingered. I knew Ava had a difficult upbringing, and part of me wondered if that had shaped her into the person she was today. Ava's challenges began long before the wedding. My first wife, her mother, left us when Ava was just 7 years old. She moved to Europe with her new partner and relinquished custody to me without a second thought. It broke my heart to see Ava go through that, but I did everything in my power to give her a stable life. For the first 6 years after the divorce, it was just the two of us. I thought we had a strong bond, but everything changed when I remarried. Mercy entered our lives when Ava was 13. She was kind, patient, and eager to build a relationship with Ava, but Ava saw her as a threat. Looking back, I understand why Ava struggled to accept Mercy. It must have been painful to see someone else take on a motherly role in her life. But Mercy was never anything but loving toward her. As a certified children's counselor, she even reassured me that Ava's hostility was normal and would likely subside as she grew older. Unfortunately, things only got worse. Ava's resentment toward Mercy deepened, and she began acting out in ways that strained our family. She fought with us constantly, refused to follow rules, and even turned against her cousins when I sent her to live with my sister for a while. Ava's time with my sister was meant to give us all a break, but it only added to the tension. At first, it seemed like the arrangement was working. Ava and my sister's daughter were the same age, and I hoped they would form a close bond. But within months, their relationship soured. Petty arguments turned into full-blown fights, and my sister eventually asked me to take Ava back. By the time Ava graduated high school, our relationship was hanging by a thread. She blamed me for everything that went wrong in her life, from the divorce to her struggles in school. Her grades were poor, and she had fallen in with a bad crowd, kids who introduced her to drugs and risky behavior. Getting her into college was another uphill battle. I had to pull strings to get her accepted into a decent school, but even then, she squandered the opportunity. She surrounded herself with the wrong people again, and her drug use escalated to the point where she had to enter rehab. Despite all of this, I never gave up on her. I paid for her treatment, supported her through her relapses, and celebrated her eventual graduation at 25. But no matter how much I tried to help, Ava remained distant and combative. Mercy bore the brunt of Ava's anger. Ava called her a gold digger, accusing her of marrying me for my family's wealth. It was a baseless claim that couldn't have been further from the truth. Mercy had built a successful career for herself long before we met, and she came from a background of struggle that made her accomplishments all the more impressive. Her family had fled a war-torn region in the Middle East and immigrated to the United States with nothing. Growing up in an NGO-run shelter, Mercy worked tirelessly to earn a master's degree and establish a life of her own. It was her resilience and determination that drew me to her, not to mention her kindness and generosity. But Ava refused to see any of that. To her, Mercy was an interloper who had no place in our family. Her resentment only grew over the years, and by the time her wedding plans began, it had reached a boiling point. After canceling the wedding, I tried to move on, but Ava's behavior continued to haunt me. I heard from my parents that she and her fiancé had eloped in a small, private ceremony shortly after the debacle. At first, I felt a flicker of relief that she had moved on, but it was short-lived. A few months later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Matt, Ava's husband. His voice was calm but strained as he asked to meet me in person. I assumed the worst, fearing that something terrible had happened to Ava. But when we met, his news was unexpected. He and Ava had separated. Matt described their relationship as tumultuous, marked by Ava's anger and volatile behavior. She had a habit of exploding over minor disagreements, throwing objects, and breaking things during arguments. He had endured it for as long as he could, but eventually, he reached his limit. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "I saw how she treated you and your wife, but I stayed quiet because I thought it wasn't my place. I wish I had spoken up sooner." I assured him that he had nothing to apologize for. Ava's actions were her own, and I couldn't hold him responsible for her choices. But his words stayed with me, adding to the growing sense of despair I felt about my daughter's life. Matt asked me to help Ava during this difficult time. He believed she needed therapy to address her anger and underlying issues, and he thought I might be the only one who could convince her to seek help. I agreed, though I wasn't optimistic. Ava had made it clear time and time again that she didn't want me in her life. Still, I decided to try. I went to her apartment, hoping to have a calm, constructive conversation. But the moment she saw me, her anger flared. She berated me, dredging up every grievance she could think of and blaming me for all her problems. "I hate Mercy," she spat, her voice filled with venom. "I've always hated her, and I'll never forgive you for marrying her." Her hatred was so intense that she even admitted she had barred us from the wedding because she was embarrassed to introduce Mercy as her stepmother. When I suggested therapy, she exploded. "I don't need help. You're the one who ruined everything, not me." Her words cut deep, but they also confirmed what I had suspected all along. Ava was trapped in a cycle of anger and blame, unable to move forward. After being thrown out of Ava's apartment, I was left feeling a strange combination of sadness, anger, and resignation. It was clear that Ava wasn't ready, or willing, to confront her issues. I had approached her with an open heart, willing to take on the blame if it meant helping her heal, but her rage left no room for reconciliation. When I returned home and told Mercy about the encounter, she was visibly upset. Despite everything Ava had said and done, Mercy still cared deeply for her and wanted to see her overcome her struggles. It was Mercy who suggested reaching out to someone from Ava's past, someone she had always been close to. We both immediately thought of Ava's childhood best friend, Megan. Megan had grown up next door to us and had been a constant presence in Ava's life during her early years. The two of them had shared an inseparable bond, and even when Ava's life became turbulent, Megan had always been a steady, calming influence. However, as they grew older and Megan moved to South Africa for work, their communication had dwindled. I reached out to Megan through social media, explaining the situation and asking if she might be willing to talk to Ava. Megan responded almost immediately, saying she would do whatever she could to help. Ava and I haven't spoken in years, she admitted, but I've always cared about her. I'll try to reach out. A few weeks passed before I heard anything further. Then, one day, my parents called to tell me that Ava had visited them. They were surprised, as Ava hadn't spoken to them since the wedding incident. According to my father, she seemed subdued, quieter than usual. She apologized for the way she acted, my father said, his voice tinged with cautious hope. She told us she's been feeling lost and overwhelmed. I could hardly believe it. After years of anger and defiance, Ava was finally beginning to show signs of introspection. My father also mentioned that she had started seeing a therapist, something Megan had encouraged her to do during their conversation. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel a sliver of hope that Ava might find her way back to a healthier, more balanced life. Despite this progress, Ava's relationship with me remained fractured. My father told me that during her visit, Ava had expressed a lingering resentment toward me. She still blames you for a lot of things, he said gently. But she also admitted that she doesn't want to carry this anger anymore. She knows it's hurting her. I took those words to heart. Ava wasn't ready to forgive me, and she might never be, but the fact that she recognized the toll her anger was taking on her life was a step in the right direction. A week later, Megan reached out to me with an update. Ava is opening up, she said. It's slow, and she still has a lot of walls up, but I think she's starting to see that her anger isn't helping her. Therapy seems to be making a difference. I thanked Megan profusely for her efforts. She had managed to reach Ava in a way that no one else could, and I was deeply grateful for her compassion and persistence. In the months that followed, Ava's progress continued. She began to mend her relationship with my parents, visiting them more frequently and even helping out with errands and chores. However, she remained distant from me and Mercy, and I respected her need for space. I didn't push for reconciliation, nor did I try to contact her directly. Instead, I focused on supporting her from a distance, ensuring that she had the resources she needed to continue her therapy and build a more stable life. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Ava had started volunteering at a local community center. The work seemed to give her a sense of purpose and fulfillment, and it was heartening to see her channel her energy into something positive. One day, my father called me with unexpected news. Ava wants to meet with you, he said. I was stunned. After everything that had happened, I never thought Ava would willingly reach out to me. My father explained that she wanted to talk about the past, but he warned me to manage my expectations. She's still working through a lot of feelings, he said. This might not be the resolution you're hoping for, but it's a step. Nervous but determined, I agreed to the meeting. Ava suggested a neutral location, a quiet cafe near her apartment. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea. Seeing her up close, I noticed how much she had changed. There was a weariness in her eyes, but also a hint of vulnerability that I hadn't seen in years. "Hi," she said softly as I approached. "Hi," I replied, taking a seat across from her. The conversation that followed was tense but honest. Ava began by expressing her feelings about the past, recounting the moments she believed I had let her down. She spoke of the divorce, my remarriage, and her struggles to find her place in a family that felt fractured. I listened without interrupting, even when her words stung. It was clear that she had been carrying these feelings for a long time, and I wanted to give her the space to express them. When she finished, I took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. "I'm sorry for the pain you've felt," I said. "I've made mistakes, and I know I can't change the past. But I've always loved you, Ava, even when we didn't see eye to eye." Ava didn't respond immediately. She stared down at her tea, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. Finally, she looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," she said. "But I don't want to hate you anymore." Those words, though far from a full reconciliation, were the most hopeful thing I had heard in years. For the first time, it felt like there was a path forward, a chance to rebuild our relationship, however slowly. We ended the meeting on a cautious but positive note, agreeing to take things one step at a time. I left the cafe feeling a mixture of relief and trepidation, knowing that the road ahead would be long and uncertain. Today, Ava and I are still working on our relationship. She continues to see her therapist and has made great strides in addressing her anger and resentment. Our interactions remain infrequent, but they are civil and, at times, even cordial. I've learned to let go of the guilt that once consumed me, focusing instead on supporting Ava in whatever way I can. Mercy has been my rock throughout this journey, offering unwavering love and encouragement. As a father, I've come to accept that I can't undo the past, but I can strive to be better in the present. Ava's journey is her own, and while I can't walk it for her, I'll always be here, ready to help if she lets me. As the months turned into a year, my relationship with Ava remained tentative but steady. She was taking significant steps in her journey toward healing, and though the process was slow, there were small moments that gave me hope. For one, Ava began reaching out to my parents more regularly. They were delighted to have her back in their lives, and she even started attending family dinners at their home. I wasn't invited to these gatherings, which stung a little, but I understood that Ava needed to rebuild her connections at her own pace. She also continued her work at the community center, where she was making a positive impact. One of my nieces, who volunteered there occasionally, told me that Ava had become a favorite among the children she worked with. Hearing that warmed my heart. My daughter, who had once seemed so lost, was finding a sense of purpose and making a difference in the lives of others. One day, Mercy approached me with an idea. "Why don't we write Ava a letter?" she suggested. "It's clear that she's not ready for a face-to-face conversation, but maybe a letter could help her see things from your perspective." At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want to risk undoing the progress Ava had made by bringing up old wounds. But Mercy assured me that the letter didn't have to dwell on the past. Instead, it could focus on the present and my hopes for the future. After much thought, I decided to give it a try. In the letter, I began by expressing my pride in Ava for the steps she was taking to improve her life. I acknowledged her hard work and growth, emphasizing how much it meant to me to see her thriving. "I know we've had our differences," I wrote, "and I take responsibility for the mistakes I've made as your father. But no matter what, I've always loved you, and I will always be here for you if you ever need me." I ended the letter by saying that I didn't expect her to forgive me or rebuild our relationship overnight. All I wanted was for her to know that my door was always open. Mercy helped me refine the letter, and when we were both satisfied with it, I mailed it to Ava. Weeks passed without a response. I told myself not to expect anything. Ava was under no obligation to acknowledge the letter, and I didn't want to pressure her. Still, I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment each time I checked the mail or my phone. Then, one evening, I received an unexpected call. It was Ava. Her voice was hesitant, almost shy, as she said, "I got your letter." For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. My heart raced as I waited for her to continue. "I just wanted to say, thank you," she said. "I'm not ready to talk about everything yet, but I appreciate what you wrote." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. It was the first time in years that she had expressed gratitude toward me, and it felt like a breakthrough, however small. Over the next few months, Ava and I began exchanging occasional texts. At first, our conversations were light and superficial, updates about work, mutual acquaintances, or the weather. But gradually, they became more personal. She told me about the progress she was making in therapy and how it was helping her understand the root of her anger. She admitted that while she still had unresolved feelings about our past, she wanted to let go of the bitterness that had consumed her for so long. "I've been carrying this anger like a weight," she wrote in one message. "I'm tired of letting it control me." Her words filled me with a sense of relief and optimism. For the first time, it felt like Ava was genuinely open to the possibility of healing, not just for herself, but for our relationship as well. Meanwhile, Mercy continued to be a source of unwavering support. She encouraged me to focus on the positive strides Ava was making and reminded me not to dwell on the past. "You've done your best," she said one evening as we sat together on the porch. "Now it's up to Ava to decide how she wants to move forward. All you can do is be there for her." Mercy's patience and wisdom were a constant source of comfort, and I often found myself marveling at her resilience. Despite everything Ava had said and done, Mercy never wavered in her compassion and love for her stepdaughter. One day, Ava surprised me by asking to meet in person. "Just you," she said. "I'm not ready to see Mercy yet, but I want to talk." I agreed without hesitation, eager for the chance to continue rebuilding our bond. We met at the same cafe as before, but this time, the atmosphere was different. Ava seemed calmer, more composed. She began by apologizing for the way she had treated me over the years. "I know I've been difficult," she admitted. "I've blamed you for a lot of things, and I'm starting to realize that not all of it was fair." Her words brought tears to my eyes. I told her how much I appreciated her honesty and how proud I was of the progress she had made. We talked for hours, delving into topics we had avoided for years. There were moments of tension and sadness, but also moments of connection and understanding. By the end of our conversation, it felt like a weight had been lifted, a burden we had both carried for far too long. Though our relationship is still a work in progress, I am filled with gratitude for the steps we've taken to mend it. Ava continues to grow and heal, and I am committed to supporting her in whatever way I can. As a father, I've learned that love isn't always easy or straightforward. It requires patience, forgiveness, and an unshakable belief in the possibility of redemption. Ava's journey has taught me that even the deepest wounds can begin to heal with time and effort. I don't know what the future holds for our family, but I am hopeful. For the first time in years, I can see a path forward, a path paved with understanding, empathy, and the possibility of reconciliation. As the months turned into another year, Ava's progress in therapy became more apparent, not just in her actions but in the way she spoke about her life. She had started to let go of some of the bitterness that had defined her relationship with me, though she admitted that forgiveness was still a complicated journey. Our interactions became more frequent, but always on her terms. Sometimes, she would text me out of the blue, sharing a small accomplishment or asking for advice. Other times, weeks would pass with no contact, and I reminded myself to respect her boundaries. One day, to my surprise, she invited me to her apartment. It was the first time she had welcomed me into her space since the fallout over her wedding. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I went with an open heart. When I arrived, Ava greeted me with a tentative smile. Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with personal touches that reflected her personality: photographs, potted plants, and books scattered on the coffee table. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something," she said as we sat down. My heart raced as I braced myself for what she might say. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said in your letter," she began. "About how you've always loved me, even when things were difficult." She paused, as if searching for the right words. "I think part of me always knew that. But I was so angry, and it felt easier to blame you for everything that went wrong in my life." Her honesty took my breath away. I could see how much it had taken for her to admit that, and I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for her willingness to open up. "I'm sorry for the way I treated you," she continued. "I know I hurt you and Mercy, and I don't expect you to just forget about it. But I want to try, to be better, to move forward." Tears welled up in my eyes as I told her how proud I was of her. "You've grown so much, Ava," I said. "And I'm here for you, no matter what." The conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. While there was still much to work through, it felt like we were finally on the same page, both committed to rebuilding what had been broken. One of the most significant moments came a few weeks later when Ava asked to meet Mercy. "I think I'm ready," she said during one of our conversations. "I know I've been unfair to her, and I want to make things right." When I told Mercy, her face lit up with a mixture of surprise and relief. She had always hoped for reconciliation, but she hadn't expected it to happen so soon. The meeting took place at our home. Ava arrived nervously, her usual confidence replaced by a quiet apprehension. Mercy greeted her with a warm smile, and I could see the effort it took for Ava to respond in kind. They sat down together, and for the first time in years, they talked, not as adversaries, but as two people trying to understand each other. Ava apologized for the hurtful things she had said and done, and Mercy, true to her nature, forgave her without hesitation. After that meeting, things began to shift. Ava started joining us for occasional family dinners, and while there were still moments of tension, there were also moments of genuine connection. She even began spending more time with my parents, helping them with small tasks around the house and listening to their stories about the past. One evening, as we all sat together around the dinner table, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a glimpse of the family I had always hoped we could be. As Ava continued her journey, she began to share more about her experiences in therapy. She told me about the insights she had gained into her anger and how it had shaped her relationships. "I think I was so scared of being hurt that I pushed people away," she admitted one day. "I didn't want to feel vulnerable, so I built walls. But all that did was isolate me." Her words resonated deeply with me. I could see how her fear of vulnerability had fueled her anger, and I was grateful that she was finally confronting those feelings. Ava's progress also extended to her professional life. She received a promotion at work, and her colleagues praised her dedication and leadership skills. It was heartening to see her channel her energy into something positive, and I couldn't have been prouder. One day, she told me about a project she was working on at the community center, a mentorship program for at-risk youth. "I want to help kids who feel lost," she said. "Maybe if someone had been there for me when I was younger, things would have been different." Her desire to give back was a testament to how far she had come. She was no longer defined by her anger or resentment. Instead, she was finding purpose and meaning in helping others. While Ava's journey has been transformative, it hasn't been without its challenges. There are still moments when old wounds resurface, and we're reminded of the pain that once divided us. But those moments are fewer and farther between, and they no longer define our relationship. For me, the most important lesson has been learning to let go of the past. I've stopped dwelling on my mistakes and instead focus on the present, on the small victories and the progress we've made together. Today, Ava is in a much better place. She continues to grow and heal, and while our relationship isn't perfect, it's stronger than it has been in years. We've learned to communicate with honesty and compassion, and we're building a foundation of trust that I hope will last a lifetime. I know there's still work to be done, but I'm optimistic about the future. Ava has shown incredible resilience and courage, and I have no doubt that she will continue to thrive. As for me, I've found peace in knowing that I did my best as a father. It wasn't always easy, and there were times when I felt like giving up. But seeing Ava's transformation has made it all worth it. Love, I've learned, is about perseverance. It's about showing up, even when things are difficult, and believing in the possibility of change. Ava's journey has been a testament to that belief, and I'm proud to call her my daughter.